people that are working there in these little rooms, and that makes me claustrophobic. Although maybe you wouldn't be as seasick because it's not as open and airy, you know.
All right, welcome everyone. It's time for the regular Summers County Board of Education meeting, January 28th, 2025, 6 p.m. We're here at Talcott Elementary. But the minutes reflect that 4 board members are present and Mr. Brogan unable to be in attendance. Mrs. Farley, would you lead us in the pledge of allegiance?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, item 3, we have approval of the agenda for adjustments.
I'd like to make a motion to pull the personnel, the recommendation for the head track and field coach for the high school, be voted on separately.
We have a motion by Mrs. Harvey, seconded by Mr. McBride to pull the head track and field coach and handle that separately under personnel. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Let the minutes reflect by 4 vote, that motion has been approved. Any other adjustments? I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented with the one-mentioned adjustment.
Second.
Motion by myself, seconded by Mrs. Harvey, to approve the agenda as presented with the one-mentioned adjustment. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Let the minutes reflect by 4 vote that the agenda has been approved as presented with one adjustment. Item 4, student achievement.
I think we'll have more information for the next board meeting. This is actually the first week of school that we might have a week of school since Christmas. We'll have the data of all the benchmarking that we've done, and I think you'll get a full report on that one. I will say, talking to a couple of our specialists, now this is informal data, it is very promising, and we're seeing some growth, but I would like our people to have a good conversation with you on that. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Good, great, thank you. Item 5, presentation, and we'll save that till the next meeting.
Yeah, Ms. Skaggs sent a text that she'll be at the next meeting and that they will be starting back up. Is next Wednesday the 5th? February 5th already?
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't believe that. Okay, so yeah, so next Wednesday they're starting back up, and ready to go. I think that's the text I forwarded, so you have, that's all I know at this point in time.
Public comments, item 6.
There are none.
Item 7, approval of minutes. We have before us the January 10th, 2025 regular meeting minutes.
I make a motion that we approve the January 10th, 2025 minutes.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Farley, seconded by Mrs. Harvey, to approve the January 10th, 2025 regular meeting minutes. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Let the minutes reflect by a 4-0 vote that the January 10th, 2025 regular meeting minutes have been approved. Item 8, approval of bills. We have before us the bills presented.
So, Kayla, what's the difference between the AT&T and the mobile communications America bill? mobile communications is actually tower rental for the bus radios and AT&T cell phones. Thank you.
And that bus one is all digital now, right?
I don't know about.
I think they
which
moved
one's
from
that.
analog to all digital too. A little more expensive.
But probably reach us further with some of
Yes,
those
yes.
rural routes.
That's easy to say.
I have never been able to say that.
Okay, do I have a motion for bills?
I make a motion to pay the bills.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Mr. McBride, seconded by Mrs. Harvey to approve payment of the bills. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, minutes reflect by 4-0 vote that the bills have been approved for payment. Old business, discussion and possible action concerning superintendent's appointment term. I'll make a motion under West Virginia Code 6-98-4 personnel that we go into executive session. The time is 6:06 p.m.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by myself, seconded by Mr. McBride to go into executive session according to West Virginia Code 6-98-4 personnel at 6:06 p.m. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, minutes reflect by 4-0 vote that we will now go into executive session. Okay. Looks like it's good. All right, the time, executive session ended was 6:45 PM. And it is now 6:45 PM, so we will call back to order the regular board meeting. And we're going to take no action on this at this time. So item 10, new business, approved purchases over 25,000. No, thank you. Item B, discussion or possible action to approve one LSIC meeting. So.
Question is, do you want to do one?
Yeah.
Or do you want to go to each village?
Well, I know we talked about one LSIC meeting, and I've thought about it. Unless there is an objection from the principals and they all just want one, I would rather have one at each school, because then we can focus on that particular school. I'm one person, so I'll let you all. I'm having discussion right now.
Well, if you don't want to do anything, then there'd be no action because it's already set up to have it
Have
at four
4.
different locations. So
Yeah.
you're good.
I like to have the student involvement. I like to see the students involved at the meetings, at the
Mhm.
individual schools. So I would like to keep it at the individual schools.
And my thoughts too, if we did it, even if we did it in 15-minute increments, we're either going to have students coming in and out while there's a presentation going on, or they're going to have to stay for at least an hour, until their presentation it's time. Whoever the last school is would be there for the full amount of time. So I would prefer to keep it at the, individual schools myself. So unless someone wants to make a motion, then we'll just take no action on that.
I think 15 minutes isn't enough time to absorb all the information we need either.
Okay, so we
The
will,
only thing, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Is I think we had to change one date due to the national board.
right,
That would be Hinton area, but that's not a big deal. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that with this
Yep.
discussion. Okay.
yep. And we can be flexible on those
Yeah.
dates when we're there. I know there were a couple meetings that at best I recall from the year-long rotation through the elementary schools, we had to flip a couple of them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we can be flexible with the
Well,
dates
our
on
next
those.
principal meeting's the 5th. We'll just talk about that. And
Okay.
They'll great. They'll come up with a plan. Everybody.
Oh,
puts
yeah.
it all together. That's not a big deal. Okay.
All right, so we'll take no action on that one. Item C, discussion or possible action to approve out-of-state overnight trips. We have Summers County High School Band, Mr. Sims, the Honors Band, February 13th through the 15th, and again, Mr. Sims with the Marshall Honor Band, February 19th through the 21st.
I'll make a motion that we approve the out-of-state overnight trips for Mr. Sims and band.
Second. Okay, so we have a motion by Mrs. Farley, seconded by Mr. McBride to approve the out-of-state overnight trips for Mr. Sims. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Let the minutes reflect by a 4-0 vote that the overnight out-of-state trips for the band have been approved. Discussion or possible action regarding the Summers County Health Center, Raynell Medical Center MOU.
So I asked for this to be put on the agenda, after we received notice that, Ms. Skaggs was not going to be in attendance for tonight's meeting, yet again. I understand she wasn't available to join us earlier in the year due to medical reasons, and that's completely understandable. However, it is now the end of January, and she's not made an appearance, nor anybody from Raynell Medical Center in her absence. And my understanding is that we have not had a provider at the high school since the beginning of the school year, and that is not acceptable. And the accommodations are almost ready, but still it's 1st of February. And in the meantime, the trailers had been taken out so that no services could be provided, except for, I'm assuming, the behavioral health, since she's located in the high school already. So I wanted to put this on the agenda for discussion with the rest of the board, as I feel like they have failed to meet their responsibilities within the MOU.
So their services weren't provided, it's your understanding services weren't provided even in the trailers during, last semester?
Right.
Do you know anything, Dr. Green, about this?
The only services we had actively provided by Raynaud Medical Center were the therapy service. And we gave them a spot in the building for which to, sit there.
But there haven't been students or faculty and staff going?
Not using medical services. The only thing they've been providing is mental health services.
And I do know that's also been at Mary.
Mental health, okay. Thank you.
Have they been providing that for quite some time now? Before the medical?
Yeah, that
Yeah, I
was
was
in place
thinking they
before.
had that even before
About
medical,
20 years?
Yeah. quite a while. I would like to, and I spoke with Ms. Skaggs once before when, she wasn't able to be here, but I know I've asked several times and we've never been given numbers, but I am curious to the number of encounters that they have had, from the health side. And last year would be the most recent that we've had. I just am curious how many students they see and how many of our staff they see, and then how many outside encounters they have from after hours. The other concern I have, based on the conversation with Ms. Skaggs, was she indicated that they might be seeing the public prior, up to 8 o'clock. And this was a conversation that we had. We have students that sometimes, probably 7:30, our earliest students are on campus. So I feel like, yeah, I feel like that seeing public up until 8 o'clock, it may create the opportunity for crossover between students and the public. So I would be curious as to the plan that they have for their public visits versus the school and or students and staff visits. Any other discussion related to Raynell?
So,
Summers County Health Center?
At this point, with this being on the agenda, I would assume there's no need to make a motion, but since she will be here at the next meeting, if she is unable to attend, Mr. Warble, I would ask that someone be here in her stead if she's unable to attend. Could make that happen. Thank you. Would that be?
Yes, absolutely. All right, any other discussion? All right, we'll move on to item 11, personnel. The first one we will handle will be the extra duty, extracurricular coaches and volunteers.
I'm gonna recuse myself because Sarah Griffin is my assistant.
All
I'll make
right.
a motion that we approve Sarah Griffin as head track and field coach for Summers County Comprehensive High School.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mrs. Farley, seconded by Mr. McBride, to approve Sarah Griffith under extra duty, extracurricular coach and volunteers as the head track and field coach for Summers County Comprehensive High School. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Let the minutes reflect by a 3-0 vote, with Mrs. Harvey recusing herself due to relationship of the candidate. So we have before us now resignation and retirements. We have leave of absence. We have employment service. We do have one additional for extra duty, extracurricular coaches and volunteers. The name that would go there would be Craig Bowling, and is that effective, tomorrow or?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I can't remember the question was asking. Dr. Green, I'm putting you on the spot, I know, but when are they starting their spring sports, you think?
March third was the last day I was doing.
Okay, but they sometimes use flex days in February, so that's the answer I gave the president, so thanks for sticking to that story. I'm just having fun.
I figured flex days were
Well,
probably getting ready to come
yeah.
into, to
Yeah.
account.
But
Yeah.
these guys are also preparing and getting ready, so.
Yeah.
Just, I wanted to make sure I answered your question.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And that's all we have for, personnel.
I make a motion that we approve the superintendent's recommendations in regard to the aforementioned, personnel.
One second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mrs. Harley, seconded by Mrs. Harvey to approve the, aforementioned recommendations by the superintendent on personnel. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstaining. Let the minutes reflect by a 4-0 vote that the superintendent's recommendations on personnel have been approved. Item 12, superintendent's report.
I sent you all an email, my Sunday, communications with you, and it was this attachment. I was told by at least one or two of you that the attachment wasn't open. I apologize for that. But tonight I gave you a hard copy with full color. I'm not gonna go over everything in detail because some of it doesn't really pertain to board members or anybody. It's just information for people to know. But the big one, the first one, as you flip through, the House Bill 3035, the Third Grade Success Act. Talked to my directors about this, and then we had our district leadership team meeting on Monday. So everybody knows that what's going on, and we want to get everybody on the same page as we move forward, because when you have these new laws enacted, it's always good in theory, but sometimes reality is not always easy, and that also includes personnel and funds. And so with this third grade act, we are getting ready to implement aids in the third grade now. Part of that third grade act is if our kids, if you flip forward, you can see the recap of when this was passed. I don't want to go into all that with everybody. The next page is the most important one, that word retention. Anytime you retain a child, that is very, that can be very detrimental to a child's future and for that family. Studies show that retention is not the best way forward to help anybody in our society. But having said that, when laws are made, we have to abide by those laws. We're the executive branch. We have to execute the law. So I don't mean kill the law, but make it happen. So basically, what we have to do as an organization is you have children, if they do not pass the math portion or the language arts portion, we're dealing with children we have to retain. And so what does that look like in a school system? I want to forward you up to the example that was given. If you go to the part here where it says example, and this is a good example that Dr. White, the deputy superintendent, took out of a county. It becomes bigger than ours, but not the biggest, was just a good example of a county. This county has 290 third grade students tested in ELA. They're just using ELA, for example. 61 of those students does not meet the standards range. 11 students' scores were within the standard error measure from the partial mastery. So remember how we showed you red is you're not passing anything, yellow is a partial, green, and then you got exceeds.
Mhm.
Well, that's what they're not talking about the exceeds right now. We're just saying if you partially. So we have 11 students that are partial. So if you take the 61 students who did not pass, she's using an example, this is real data from a county. 33 of the 61 students are on an IEP with exceptionalities that were found below. So out of the 33, they put bullets. 0 are gifted. 1 is hard of hearing. They're exempt from any of that. 13, speech only. They are not exempt. They have no exemptions. The 5 children who are autistic are exempted. And you can read down through their other health impaired, specific learning disability. And then 2 took the alternative academic assessment. Those are also exempt. Out of those kids, 20 students would be exempted from retention. So you don't retain anybody that has an IEP specific towards a disability because that's not the fault of the kid. So if you look at it, the next bullet says there's 20 students who would be exempted from retention, but look how many students would still be retained. Out of the 61 students, 30 to 41 students would have to be retained. Now, in a county this size, that means they would have to hire 2 to 3 teachers just for that, because by state code, you have to have 25 or lower. And depending on these kids' ability, you're gonna look at special interventions to make sure they can pass. That's a lot of children. So if you flip to the next sheet, if you take the whole state there with that trend, this is what they are showing. You have 16,268 third grade students were tested statewide. A little over 4,000 students does not meet. You're talking a lot of students now that are not meeting that criteria. 784 students then would be in that standard error with partial, and 2,000 to 4,000 students would be in that position to exempt. So when you look at it statewide, you're going to be retaining anywhere from 2,038 students to 2,822 students. So that's still a lot of children in our state being retained, and that's just language arts. I haven't touched math yet, and that was the example they wanted to show us and see what we will do with that. They gave us an example of additional retentions, and we'll be going through that as a county and with other surrounding counties and throughout the state. And if you flip to the next one, it's showing best practices to start having in place right now. We do a lot of this already, but we will be working with our ESC and the state to try to come up with some good ideas. And I don't mean our ESC is going to be responsible. I mean the 12 county superintendents and the 12 Southern West Virginia. We work together already. We might have to join efforts on professional development as we move forward, because this is a lot for county school systems to look at. Now, I bet you want to ask me a question. How does it pertain to us? Next board meeting, we'll have that information. We knew you'd probably want to ask that question, right? That's the one I'd want to know. But we'll get that information to you, because Dr. Knott would have to go through to say which one would be exempt.
Right.
Which one would say, we want to give you hard data and give you actual data about our county. So I wanted you to know that would be a question I would ask as a board. What are you doing about it? How many kids would that be? And we want to try to give you that data next board meeting as well. We're going to break out the language arts, we'll break out the math, and we'll try to give you that data to give you, what is the cost of that to the county? And I'm not just talking about money, but what does that cost with getting that done effectively and
Right.
efficiently? So I just wanted to make sure you guys understood that. What the state did then is, this didn't come off really well, this sheet here. One example they gave, just pretend like there's a lot of lines and you're looking at an Excel spreadsheet. I don't know why lines didn't print out, but they tried to use an example of the student, the grade, the benchmark of the beginning, middle, and end of the year. Are they on IEP 504? Did they do summer school? Did they go to after school? So we talked about our after school programming and our summer school need to be more intensified with direct instruction to help with the language arts and math of that child's deficiency, if you will. And then the group, when I talk to the group, and I don't mind the group chiming in, I'm gonna remember this. We need to put attendance on there. Are you coming to school? Because that's a big factor. Is there anything I missed with our conversations, gang? Not trying to stump you, I'm just trying to remember if there's anything. We had some good, healthy discussions.
I mean, this year we had approximately 80 third graders.
I mean, that's,
But those numbers,
our numbers compared to the example are very fractional in comparison. And I think what the legislature is trying to do here is, if we and they have put into place having aides in pre-K, kindergarten, first, second, and third grade to be able to help identify reading and math disability needs from dyslexia and dyscalculia at an earlier age. Identify and address those needs at that earlier age and have that more intensive support. You shouldn't have to retain as many students, because they're getting more support from instructional support to meet the benchmarks, if not exceed them. So you shouldn't have to retain them. And that's one fallacy in the example that the state gave, unfortunately, is that class that they decided to pull out did not have the luxury of having aides all the way from K to 3.
Yeah, because the data we're gonna give you is like the state. You're going actual, real data of this year's fourth grade.
Right.
You're not.
And that's not fair. It's not apples to apples.
Well, I see your point. I think the biggest thing though is for everybody to understand, if you do nothing, you will have a problem.
Exactly.
And so what they're saying is we gotta act now because a year from now, you're gonna have this problem if you don't start I don't wanna say fix, but the biggest headache that most school systems will have is not what you're saying, it's getting them to come to school. I know I had Mr. Metter and Miss Newsom, they went to a house and the family hid from them. I can't make them open the door and go in there, but they knew the kid was in there, the family's in there, and that kid cannot read and cannot write and cannot do math, and they are under the age of third grade. If we have adults go to that building and they will hide from us, I'm not having anybody be aggressive with them. The next step Mr. Metter will have to do is have the court system, but even then, the problem you have is they'll just say, I'm going homeschool. And I think what happens there is, forget all this data. That kid is now going down a path where they're going to be a statistic in our society who will never graduate and never have a great life because they're already handcuffed because their parents won't step up to the plate and get them to school. That's our biggest thing, is getting them to the school system right now. So that's some things we're going to have to work on to try to entice people to get to school. Because you'll see here attendance is another one they've talked about as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next, is there anything else? Sorry. The next one is Governor Morrissey and his executive orders. That's just FYI stuff. You have the governor's cabinet, and then you have all these different names here. Basically, the reason why they gave us the names is because anytime you see some of these people like finance, judiciary, education, if you look at health and human resources, Vince Deeds is the vice chair on that. He's one of our people. Government organization, Jack David Woodrum as well. It's always good to keep a conversation with these people about what we're actually dealing with and some solutions, and not come to them with more problems, but say, how can we work together and make sure we can help each other out as we move forward. But this is just for everybody's information as you look to see these different committees as you go through this, just for your information. It's kind of nice to have it in print form so you guys can see this. I thought you might like this as well. The next one is compulsory attendance. That was one that we talked about. Basically, the state is moving forward with a different way of doing attendance. And this is going to be a huge paradigm shift for all education majors. Is we're used to coding stuff with, well, they missed because they had a doctor's excuse, or they went with their parents on an academic trip, or all that kind of stuff. You can figure out excuses. Excuse me. Then you have the ones that are not excused. The state's saying, we just want to know if they're there or not, because we need to get them in school. If they're a family that does take their kids on an academic trip, and that kid gets A's and B's and does well in school with behavior and attendance, then that shouldn't be your focus. Your focus should be more on the kids that we talked about earlier, but that extreme that I just talked about. Having said that, we still have to have some parameters in place to say, if I do send you to the court system and the magistrate goes, what are the guidelines and the criteria that I need to know before you hand them over to me? And what are you doing to try to prevent them from getting to this point? So those are the questions that still need to be had. Those are the conversation and the dialogue that the state's having with all the counties. But as we move forward, the second bullet is the most that we focus on in our school system already, is what is the root cause? Well, I can tell you the root cause of that example I gave you. The parents don't really care, and that's not that kid's fault. That little kid, that's not their fault. It's their problem, but it's not their fault. So that's a root cause. Parents don't value education. They hide. That we know. What can we do with that root cause once we know that? How can we lure them back into school and say, we love you, we care for you, want to help your kid out? So those are the questions we have to ask ourselves. The school calendar, the reason why this was brought up, and I've dealt with this from my office, and you've heard me on the voicemail or the texting. We have used 5 calamity days. I don't even call them snow days, but if you want to call them, that's fine. You get 5 calamity days. I don't care if the governor says there's declared an emergency. They give you 5, whatever. You get 5. Now we have 5 non-instructional. Miss Jones are non-traditional. I think I said that wrong, didn't I? I better take this mix. I'm about coughing again. But anyway, non-instructional, non-traditional, geez. Miss Jones does a great job working with not only the calendar committee, but she also has to submit data to the state to get approval that we have more minutes in a day to say, can we get the non-traditional or reimagine time, whatever you want to call it. Once we get that go-ahead, that means we have 5 calamity, use them however you want, and the 5 non-traditional reimagined time. That's all you get, 10. Once you burn those, and I'll use the word burn, use, exhaust, you got to make those days up, and that's in the calendar, and we've worked with our calendar committee. Meanwhile, we're getting ready to get the calendar committee fired up again, and that's next month already. So I just want to let you guys know, if you get questions about that, people challenge, I don't care if the governor says you have a lot of flooding or you don't have electric, you got to make those days up. That's just how it is. I'm not trying to be difficult, but I think the State Department has received quite a few calls, and they just want everybody to know, this is what it's right here in writing, and here's state code, and you guys can now do it by verse to people, and if anybody calls you, you can say, I understand, I hear you, but here it is, okay? There's additional information about the calendar. Elementary education, alternative education, we are ahead of the plan on this one. Dr. Lynn Knott was able to get a grant, and this is what we already have housed at the annex building at Hinton. What do we have, about 4 or 5 kids? 6? 4? So we have 4 kids already in that. A lot of counties do not have this. This is our tier 4 to help those children out. You can see the 3 dots there. Our funding is from a grant. We do have correct workforce working with them. And we do have a possible regional support through the ESC, but we don't have to worry about that since we already have ours. But what they're looking at is regional alternative for elementary. It's better to keep them in our county because once you bus them, you're just asking for it. Right, Jay? You did busing. You put a bunch of kids in there and have problems, they're just going to get together and have more problems. I'm just being honest. That's usually what happens. The expiring funds was just for all the superintendents to know. If you get an email from the State Department, there was about $9 million left on the table with COVID money in the state of West Virginia with the counties. I don't know who they are, but I know it's not us. We didn't get that email. We expended all of our funds. The only ones that we said we might not have expended all the way was homeless because we didn't have the numbers. So you can't just make up numbers. You have to send that. But that was peanuts compared to the millions of dollars we received already. So we're good there. The legal issues, that's just the stuff we just talked about earlier with that big one. With retention, certification, background checks, James Agee at the State Department, with his leadership, we've been able to find and label people who are bad actors in education. And that has really helped out because the last thing I want to do is if you apply for a job, we want to make sure you aren't on that list because some people do slip through and it's not because anybody did anything wrong. It's just some things just don't get to that level where it's like this, but people can put on their comments about a person to say, buyer beware, if you will, and check resources on that one. But Mr. Agee does a great job. He's a retired cop, and that dog, he still hunts. And I love it that he tries to get rid of the riffraff in education. So we appreciate that. And then real quick, that's the new website launch. You see it right there. I don't want to announce it out loud to everybody because this is a soft launch, and they just wanted us to check it out. You guys check it out, see what you think. They're trying to make it user-friendly for the public, especially parents, and try to make it more user-friendly. And then the last one is the Strive. We've been working with Miss Klein. She's a retired superintendent from Wyoming County. Our directors and I have been working with her to let the state know things that are working, things that aren't, and some questions we might have. And my team can tell you from their point of view, they're here. It is nice to talk to her. She does listen. She does take notes. And she'll tell us, you know what, other counties are saying that too, or wow, I didn't think about that one. So the good news is, I think it's more collegiality and we're sharing with each other. Not that we're all having a tough time, just that we understand we have the same struggles and it's just not our county, you know, and sometimes it's good to hear that too, like hiring people, finding quality people, find anybody that wants to still coach any athletics, because parents can be ruthless to coaches and referees, those kinds of things. So, other than that, I know I hit you hard with a lot of information, but I thought you need to know what was said at this meeting. Do y'all have any questions?
I don't at this
Okay.
time.
Yes, I do. Has anything said, in regards to the funding freeze, federal funds and how we may be impacted from that?
We received an email today from Miss Black, State Superintendent. That's to be continued right now. They don't know exactly yet, but she wanted us in this email, unless you guys have heard anything lately, but right now, we're in a holding pattern. But I have not heard any extra unless you did from your office.
I got one from the line saying that we should be okay as of right now.
Okay, there you go.
We can still go on. Didn't think, for what I read, it didn't include Title I, special ed. So I think Caleb said, things like are okay.
I would assume they'll let us go for the rest of this year, because no politician wants to hear that their special needs child or someone in education with their children have been hurt or punished because of someone wants to say, I don't want the funds to go there. There has to be some rationale to it. Now, could that be next school year? That's probably where they would go with it the following school year, not the current one, because there's too many things in play right now for our children. But once we find out anything, because that hit the news today on Metro News. But Michelle Blatt sent that out to all of us that just beware.
There's potential for a lot of changes. So we just have to be able to react to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Item 13, discussion of next agenda, next regular meeting held at Summers County Comprehensive High School, February 11th, 2025 at 6 p.m. Any items you all would like to have on that agenda? So Rainell Medical, discussion, possible action. Okay, discussion of possible action. So we'll just carry that one over. Also, you can we'll just carry over the, their old business, where's that? 9A, old business discussion and possible action concerning superintendent's employment term. We'll just carry those two items over. And as always, if you have any items that you want added to the agenda, just reach out to Mr. Warhol or myself. We can get those added. Item 14, point of privilege, Mrs. Harvey.
I don't know if I can get my thoughts together on this one, and that come out coherent. I think given the current state of our government, no matter what side of the fence you find yourself in, articles and actions from both sides, in my perspective, education is at a crossroads. And I would be one of the first ones to tell you that doing what is best and what is right for the kids will always be my guiding light in my decisions. And I think we as an educational system need to take a step back and remind ourselves that our students are not the customer. Our students are the product that we produce. In being able to provide a qualified, knowledgeable, skillful workforce once they leave our doors. And in such, I think we have to be willing to meet the community and the parents, the guardians, where they're at. I think we've done a good job in trying to do that through different programs with communities at schools. and other programs that we've implemented over the past several years. And I think we have to be willing to change how we teach and educate, because the pressures for our parents and our students is that they no longer have to go the traditional public school education route. And they are now being given opportunities to go through other different routes. And we have to be willing to be able to deliver education in a way that technology makes available to them today. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Mrs. Farley?
Well, you know, we've been in a big cold snap, a lot of snow. On New Year's Day, mine and Joey's furnace gave out and was out for several days. Evidently, you can't just call somebody for a furnace part in the state of West Virginia. You have to order one from across the country. And so it never got above 46 in our house for like 10 days. And we had a friend offer for if we could stay at their place. And so we were warm. But it really got me to thinking, though. That was before it dipped down into negative temperatures. And I know that there are people in Summers County that don't even have heat on a regular basis. And we are fortunate to have that. If you know of students or families that need things such as heat help or coats are something we take for granted. Blankets, that's something we take for granted. If you know of children that need things like this, we do have communities and schools in place at all of the schools. Reach out to one of us, reach out to one of the schools so that we can help get our students, their families, or any family in Summers County what they need, because that was humbling for us. We were wearing our coats in our house and you could see your breath in the bathroom when you took a shower. So, yeah. That it really makes you stop and think. We take a lot of things for granted. So if you know of families that need something like that during this cold time, just reach out to us.
Thank you, Mrs. Farley. Mr. McBride?
Well, I went through a similar experience with the cold and everything, and I think back over the years when I was still driving a school bus, and all the kids that you would stop at a bus stop, and I mean it would be frigid outside. I mean single digits, and they wouldn't have even a jacket to wear, and so I would just ask everyone to just please tell your employees, whether it's the bus garage or at your individual schools, look for those kids because they're out there. I stopped at the bus stop one morning and it was in the single digits. We were on a 2-hour delay. The mother had went to work before time for the bus to run. The boyfriend put the kids out at the bus stop at the regular time. And they stood there for 2 hours waiting on the bus.
Oh.
And it was, as soon as they were crying, kids were crying. So I put them on the seat behind me, turned the heat up as high as I could. And it's just, I mean, that's been several years and it hasn't left my mind. So please watch for these kids.
Because I know it still happens.
Yeah, and a lot of times their parents are not watching.
All right. Thank you, Mr. McBride. We briefly talked about it at the last meeting. I'm going to touch on it again just for a minute. Occasionally you hear of a student who goes through their complete school career and they never miss a day. I know of one student that I can think of that I know has done that. but it's even more rare, I think, that you get an employee who goes through and never misses a day of work. And we approved the last meeting, the retirement of Bo Donahue. And I just want to take a minute and just thank him for his dedication that he's given to our school system. Um, these kids, they always seem to remember their bus drivers. I still remember who the buses I rode on and the drivers that I had and the conversations that we had. So, whether we realize it or not, everyone in our school system impacts the lives of our students. And Bo's been a faithful employee. He's always kept a clean, shiny bus. He always, him and his dad both took pride in having clean buses that always had a shine on them. So he's going to be missed. Maybe he'll come back and do a little sub driving for us if we're lucky.
Mr. Angel, on that one with Bo, just a quick story, that Ford tractor, that blue one, that's been at the high school for years and
Yeah.
out of commission. You know how he knows Ford.
Mm-hmm.
He knew enough to help out, but then Austin took it from there. And it was kind of cool to see Bo, who, I know what you're saying. I
Mhm.
want him to still be around
Right.
like you do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but we're giving him a hard time that we need to get him to be Service Employee of the Year for the whole state because there's a guy in this cabinet out here, Mr. Wheeler, who
Mhm.
keeps saying I'm the only one. And I thought, Bo would be good competition. I think that's kind of healthy for our county.
I think it would be. I think it would. But I just want to express my gratitude to Bo. And then also, as we've heard, and we are all aware of these cold temperatures, I remember the morning it was -2, and I went out to check on the cows before work, and I was glad to get back inside. But we had a lot of workers who even when school was called off, they were clearing parking lots, doing the best they could with the snow and ice. And that's what it takes to keep things going, because when that weather does warm up, if we didn't have those workers doing their jobs, we wouldn't be able to resume school even with warmer weather until those parking lots were cleared and things were taken care of. Maintenance on our buildings, with that, if we're not prepared for that cold weather, if maintenance hasn't been done, if the heating systems are not kept up with, we could suffer busted pipes and what have you. So, that was one of the colder, this has been one of the colder winters we've seen for a while. I've often said that since my dad passed, we've been blessed with warm weather, warm winters. But I think that this year, the Lord said I'd had enough time to prepare, and He decided He was going to give us a little more bad weather. So with that, it's good to see that we were prepared as a school system. And while we were out of school, it was not as impactful on us as it was some of our surrounding counties. I noticed that we did have school on some days that other counties didn't have school. And I know there's often the public opinion of, well, there's no snow. Why are we canceling school? But as we've talked about, the cold temperatures come into play. We when I was in school, we had gas buses, and now they're diesel, and that's a little more difficult as far as getting those started and warmed up in the winter. So there's a lot of factors that come into play now that didn't in years past. And then the last comment I want to make, uh, I've noticed I've been to the school a few times in the evenings to whether to pick up my daughter or for meeting or what have you. And as the buses are leaving, as the students are leaving, we have Mr. Bauer from the bus garage. We have Brian Boone from the bus garage, and we usually have Tad as well out there stopping traffic and letting our buses and everyone leave our campus. And I think that's a good practice to have right now. We do have a lot of drivers that are just learning to drive, and we're giving them a safe environment to be able to get onto the road, and they, that extra step to make sure that our students are safe, and that our students on the buses are also safe. I think that just shows how our employees continue to go above and beyond what's required of them. So, again, I know my comments have been geared toward our employees, and we have a great group of employees in this county from service to professional, and all the way around. The employees here truly care about our kids, and that's what's most important.
Sure is.
All right, with that, we are at item 15. Mr. McBride.
Make a motion, we adjourn. Time is 7:30.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. McBride, seconded by Mrs. Harvey. We adjourn this meeting at 7:30 PM. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining. Minutes reflect by a 4-0 vote that this meeting is now adjourned.